Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
Thanks, Allan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest today from San Diego is Richard Chapo. And he's the attorney that helps you protect yourself in this ever-changing world of the internet. Hey, Richard, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, you're very welcome. It's good to have you. My sense is, and obviously you would know this much better than I, but my sense is people get so wrapped up in the internet and websites and social media and all those kinds of things and our instant gratification kind of philosophy. Do they even think about the legal problems that could occur?
Typically not. And the reason for that is people are being entrepreneurial in nature, and when you're doing that, it can be, exciting and motivating. And it was very much the wild, wild west. There weren't very many laws that applied to it, and those that did were really kind of designed to help it grow. So you saw laws like the DMCA that protected websites like Facebook and Twitter and what have you from copyright infringement claims and things of that sort. What we've seen in the last 5 years is something called the splinter net. Phrase that's been used by a number of different people, but it's basically governments coming online or economic entities coming online and trying to assert their authority, if you will, and it's leading to the internet, at least as a commercial medium, starting to split up. You're starting to see things that most of us thought we would never see, such as a lot of U.S. newspapers are no longer viewable in Europe. LinkedIn is not viewable in Russia. All these different countries. Yeah, and the thing is, you're always going to have those outliers. I mean, if your website isn't viewable in North Korea, it's probably not a big deal. But the fact that Europe in particular has become so anti-America, or anti the United States from a regulatory standpoint, that they've issued all these rules and regulations, it's really forcing businesses, particularly small businesses and startups, even mom-and-pop operations, into very uncomfortable situations, as they try to look at some of these regulations that are abroad and try to figure out how they're going to, comply with them or not comply with them or what have you, because, of course, the benefit of the Internet is it's worldwide, which gives you a huge market. But the downside, of course, is it's worldwide.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's what's the old catch-22 thing. So when you have a relatively new entrepreneur and they're let's say they're an online business first and foremost, and then they get in, they start finding out that they need some help. You mentioned ICANN, which I'm familiar with because of the websites that I have, and GoDaddy.com comes out to confirm all that kind of information. The DCMA, though, I don't know what that is. How can listeners use how can listeners use the DMCA, that should be, to protect their website from copy infringement lawsuits?
Right. So one of the biggest issues that you had online when the Internet first was created was, let's think about pre-Internet. So Let's take a book. Let's say Stephen King writes a book. It's a paperback novel, the kind of thing you read at the beach. For you to go ahead and copy that and recreate it, you really have to have a malicious intent to do that. I mean, it's not just something that's easy to do. Once the Internet, kind of found its foundation and people started using it and we moved beyond dial-up, the ability to copy and republish content became very easy. I mean, it's literally right-click, save, and publish.
Right.
And so, you look at the environment in Washington, D.C. now, it's kind of hard to believe, but in 1998, Congress and the political parties got together and they realized that the Internet was a potentially huge medium from an economic point of view, and they decided to support it and passed a number of laws. The DMCA is the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It was enacted in 1998. And what it says, basically, it says a number of different things, but the area we're interested in is Section 512, and it talks about giving websites immunity from copyright infringement claims based on content that people upload to those sites. So if we think of the classic case of Facebook,
sure.
Facebook has, I don't know how many users, 1.5 billion or something. It's very difficult for them to obviously monitor everything that people load to their pages. And so what the DMCA says is as long as Facebook follows a particular procedure, a compliance procedure, it can't be held liable if I, for instance, go ahead and I read an article I like, I copy it from the New York Times or whatever newspaper, and then I repost it on my Facebook page. Well, that's copyright infringement. I can be held liable for that, but under the DMCA, Facebook cannot. And so it creates this what's called a safe harbor immunity.
Okay.
And it's it's been critical for the internet to grow, quite frankly, particularly in North America, because copyright infringement is probably the number one issue that we see pop up online from a legal perspective. So
well, and more, I think, unless they are malicious, like you were saying, I think people oftentimes probably, look at an article and say, "Wow, I didn't know that. I'm going to share that with my friends on Facebook," and unbeknownst to them, they could be setting themselves up. Is that right?
Yes, no, absolutely. It's kind of a divide. I tend to see the ugly side, just given the nature of my profession. But there are people that have bots out there that will go out and just automatically copy sites and republish them on a new domain.
Yeah.
They're black hatters and they're trying to make money quickly off of that before it gets taken down and so on and so forth. So you get both sides of it.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, a lot of people that are doing copyright infringement don't really realize it. And again, that's the nature of the web. It's also the nature of a fundamental change in our society, which is, before the internet, the idea of sharing a lot of your personal activities with a bunch of people is something you wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have.
Yeah, here's a picture of my dinner. How you doing?
Right, exactly. And now, the nature of social media, particularly Instagram, people share everything.
Yeah.
And it's, and that's a fundamental change. And so the mentality that many people have, particularly as you get younger, is, that this is okay. And in the social media context, it is. And that's fine because those images and that content is meant to be shared to go viral and all those kinds of things.
Right.
But a lot of people just assume that applies to everything online, and obviously it doesn't. So you get into issues of, was copyright infringement innocent or was it malicious? And the penalties vary greatly. For a malicious copyright infringement action, a judge could award damages of $150,000 per. And
you can't claim ignorance, right?
Well, you can. So if you just were clueless and didn't know, and you can show that, and the evidence tends to show it eventually.
Okay.
The judge would still award damages against you, but it could be as low as $200.
Okay. So one of the things that you mentioned when I read through your bio are 7 steps to protect yourself when running a business online. And can you kind of share those with us and see what kind of epiphanies people might have in listening to you? Well,
I think that there are a number of different ways to go with these things, but one of the important things to keep in mind is that before we talk about them, is these are just the cautionary steps, the things that people need to think about. It's kind of like a to-do list. When you're an attorney and you do any kind of interview, there's always a little bit of wariness about people.
Start
getting scared and decide not to take the steps that you want them to take. So you have the basic initial ones, which are obviously to certainly consider forming some kind of a business entity to protect you. The reason that you want to do that is it's going to create a shield between the business assets and your personal assets. Unfortunately, businesses fail.
Yeah.
That's kind of the nature of the game. Everybody has a great idea, but you're never really sure if it's going to take off.
So is that as simple as setting up an LLC or something like that?
It is. And now there are quite a few advantages to it, particularly from a tax perspective. The Trump tax changes, whatever you think of the politics of all that stuff, does create a rather huge deduction for people who are, now running businesses through LLCs or any kind of pass-through entity. So it's definitely something you want to look at.
Okay.
Something you want to consider. Another one that a lot of people don't think about is insurance. Going out and getting insurance, liability insurance for your business is important because even if you form an LLC, you run into a situation where, let's say you get sued for copyright infringement or something of that sort. Well, how are you going to pay a lawyer to defend the case?
Yeah.
And that's a big dollar item typically. We don't come cheap. And, in that situation, you need to have a pool of money. Well, most small businesses don't.
Yeah.
So instead, the answer is to go with liability insurance. Liability insurance will do 2 things. One, it'll pay for your defense fees. And the second thing is it'll pay any settlement or judgment, against your business up to the policy limits.
And
so
I think
something
like that, I mean, you think about that with brick and mortar buildings. You don't businesses. You rarely think about that for business online, but it's equally critical, huh?
It is, and particularly it's become more so because, if you run a business, you're going to run into situations where you'll have reviews, or you may have competitors who do things underhanded. They hire somebody in the Philippines to leave, hundreds of negative reviews on your site on Yelp,
Right.
all these kinds of things. Defamation. There's all kinds of issues that pop up online. And what we're seeing is the online environment's just kind of really molding more towards what you see with traditional businesses. There's been kind of a big evolution in that in the last 10 years. So, having that insurance there is definitely something that you want to do.
Makes sense.
Give you peace of mind at night.
Yeah.
So another step is if you have a website and you're selling anything that is yours, so not an affiliate site, but the site that you're selling, your own products, whatever those may be, or even your own services, you want to have terms and conditions. Terms and conditions act as a contract with your clients or customers. Now, here's the key thing that's happened in the law that a lot of people are not aware of. When you go to some websites and you buy something or you order something, you try to check out, they force you to check a box saying that you've read the terms and conditions of privacy policy.
Right.
When you do that, that's basically your signature on that contract. It's called a click wrap agreement. And so the courts now, if you do not have that check the box function, they're very, very hesitant to enforce your terms and conditions against anybody. And so when you see people that just have a link at the bottom of their websites as terms and conditions, and they never ask anybody to check the box, they're really not doing it right, and they're pretty much
that makes
wasting
sense.
their time. Yeah. And terms and conditions are important because, again, the internet, the worldwide nature of it. If you're in, Colorado, or you're in, wherever you may be, you have access to a large market. Well, if somebody in Seattle gets angry at you and decides to file a lawsuit, you're going to have to go to Seattle to defend it and what have you. But in your terms and conditions, you can include a clause called the choice of forum clause. And the choice of forum clause can say, essentially that any legal dispute that arises between the parties has to be heard wherever you are located.
Oh, wow.
So it makes a big difference there.
Fairly, it raises the question for any kind of online business that if you even remotely in your 2:30 in the middle of the night nightmare go, oh shit, pardon my French, I could get sued. I could get sued over this if you don't have the terms and conditions, like you say. It's very easy that you would have to be required to go to Seattle or New York or the Bahamas or wherever, right?
No, absolutely. One of the benefits, kind of an indirect happenstance benefit of the internet, is the value of sales or the value of services that are exchanged over the internet tend not to be particularly large. We're not buying a house.
Right.
And so the nature of the potential damage is usually low enough, that will mitigate against that happening. So if I've purchased voice services from you for, let's just make something up, $200.
Sure.
I'm only going to go so far.
Right.
To try to collect that. Now, if that number is, $200,000, well, okay, now that's a whole different deal because it makes sense for me to go for it.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So there is that aspect of it. What we do see online is people going with class action lawsuits to try to get around that. Class action lawsuit is a lawsuit where there are many plaintiffs who have the same claim against the defendant. So you'll see the late night commercials on TV with various pharmaceuticals, and there's a claim that the pharmaceutical fails in some way or causes damage in some way. And what they're trying to do is get 5,000 or more people, or whatever the number happens to be, to get together and pursue one lawsuit against those entities. So again, in your terms and conditions, you have one language that would limit people's ability to do that.
Gotcha.
That kind of a thing. So,
fascinating.
Yeah, it's technical, and a lot of people aren't particularly interested in it, but it is something that can be a real key to saving you. Let's see. So automatic. Okay, so if you have situation, one of the holy grails of being online is that you can have reoccurring billing. So we look at a situation where you're charging somebody monthly, typically for access to something, so let's say Netflix, that kind of a thing. Many states have actually passed laws requiring disclosures associated with automatic billing. And the reason for that is we went through a phase on the internet, we don't see too much anymore, but early on where you would sign up for a free trial for something for $1.29 or whatever it was for 7 days, and then it was nigh impossible to figure out how to get out of that free trial.
Yeah.
It was just impossible. You couldn't find it. So these states are now requiring that there be disclosures and that there be directions. Here's how you end the free trial before you start getting billed. An email has to be sent with a link and all these different things. So if you do pursue recurring billing, make sure that you're aware of those laws and that you go ahead and comply with them.
Well, and one of the things with recurring billing, I think, is you sign up for something and there's a little fine print down there that says this will automatically renew unless you notify us within 30 days. And I can't imagine that everybody pays attention to that, and all of a sudden they're going, oh, crap, I didn't want to sign up for this again.
Right. And then, there's two situations with that. One, you can bring an action under law. In California, the California law will actually say that if the disclosure is not done correctly, which most companies don't,
right,
they consider your payments to be a gift.
Wow.
So you can reclaim all the payments that you've made, plus some penalties. It is pretty brutal, and you see large companies run into it. Dropbox and some of these other companies have kind of run face first into sued over these things because, quite frankly, just not aware they're out there. One of the things about internet laws is just they pass laws at the European Union level, then they pass them at country level, then they pass them at state level,
right.
And you can have regulations that nobody's heard of. Anybody listening to this that's running an online business is probably breaking a variety of different laws.
Well, I would think so, and I would think that would raise cause to go, I need an evaluation of what I'm doing, and that's what you can do for folks, right? Whether they're small, medium, large, whatever, take a look at what they're doing, recommend steps to take to better protect themselves, or in some cases just flat out protect themselves from possibilities of things, correct?
Correct. And, today what we're really seeing is, with privacy law in particular, at this point, I practice in California, there are other lawyers in other states, but you really do need to sit down with somebody and talk to them about, how you're going to approach your market, because, the rules and the penalties have become so extreme. With the GDPR, the new European privacy law, went into effect on May 25th. The penalties are 4% of your gross worldwide revenue, or $24 million. Obviously those numbers are really intended more for the Facebooks and Googles of the world.
Correct.
But each of the EU member states, which are 28, has their own enforcement agencies. Some of them are reasonable, like the ICO in the UK, and some of them are just completely out of control.
Wow.
Like the CLI.
So if people want to get an evaluation, want to learn more about how to protect themselves, I realize you're in California, but can you offer that service to people in other states, or do they need to reach out to someone in their own state that can help them? What's the best way for people to proceed?
At this point, I recommend they sit down with somebody in their own state. You can do a search online for Google for internet law, or internet lawyer, and then run those results through Yelp to see what clients are saying about the various attorneys. The reason why I suggest you do it in your states have now become very proactive in passing laws because obviously Washington, D.C., we have a bit of a gridlock. It's not a lot getting done in relation to the internet. And so states have tried to step into the void. And so if you are in California, Washington, Colorado, or wherever, you have particular state laws that you're going to need to comply with.
Makes sense. Yeah. Well, folks, if you are in California, then you need to get a hold of Richard, and that is SoCalInternetLawyer.com, SoCal InternetLawyer.com. He's on Twitter at Richard A. Chapo, LinkedIn at Richard A. Chapo, Facebook at Richard A. Chapo. And if you're not in California, then obviously follow Richard's advice and do a Google search for Internet Lawyer, and then do your due diligence to make sure that you are going to reach out to somebody who has some integrity, some experience, and can truly help you out.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Hey, really enjoyed it. Great information. Our guest again, Richard A. Chapo from San Diego, 100-degree California, but no fires where you are. So that's a gift, man. Richard, thanks so much. Really, really informative. You piqued my interest in a lot of things. So continued success to you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you. Thank you again for having me on.
Your 20-minute podcast with David Brower has been brought to you by Audible. You can listen to any of David's podcasts anywhere podcasts can be found, including iHeartRadio, the Spotify mobile app, and at davidbrowervo.com/your20-minute podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.